everybody. Welcome. Glad you guys could join us. The three of us here on this panel today, virtual roundtable as it were, based on everything today, is about DaaS, D-A-A-S, or better known as Desktop as a Service. So we have some great info coming your way. So let me get off that and kind of get on to a little bit of introductions, and then I'm going to turn it over and let Sonia tell you a little bit more about DaaS, and then we'll go into some of the information that we've got for you. So my name is Tom Graham. I'm the Region Director of Technology Source out of the Southeast, the Nashville office. I have about 20 years of experience in technology, 6 years military experience, and I worked for both AT&T Business and Windstream in professional services in design and implementation, all the stuff that goes along with that. So I'm really glad to be here at Technology Source. I want to also introduce on the panel Rob Olson. Rob is a results-oriented, high-energy and driven executive with 20-plus years of experience himself, delivering revenue growth and successfully executing business plans. Rob brings Technology Source executive-level sales and marketing leadership with experience ranging from startup environments to national sales organizations. Prior to joining Technology Source, Mr. Olson held the position of Channel Chief at Global Capacity, the Vice President of Channel West at SpectraTel, and Director of Channel Sales at Earthlink. Also on the panel, which is really going to be mostly the moderation coming from Ms. Sonia Moline. And Sonia is a dynamic leader with extensive business continuity planning experience. She holds a deep passion for sharing the tools of success with others and can be found volunteering in her local community or participating in the mentoring program for the Alliance of Channel Women. Previously a chief executive for business cloud services firm Effortless Office and founder and partner in compliance firm ComplyPro, she joins Technology Source with a passion for business improvement. While at these firms, she implemented extensive pandemic planning measures. These included virtualizing infrastructure and eliminating physical hardware such as servers and computers to enable both on-site staff and the remote workforce. So without further ado, I'd like to turn it over to Sonia. Welcome, everybody.
Hi, good morning. Sonia Moline here. Thank you for coming today. I kind of wanted to just talk to you today a little bit about Desktop as a Service and tell you my experience with Desktop as a Service. And I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and get started. All right, so as we said, this is a virtual roundtable on cloud workspaces, what C-level executives need to know. Today, we're going to talk about some case studies about where Desktop as a Service was deployed and how it worked out for those organizations. We'll talk about just what is Desktop as a Service and some kind of go down a few rabbit holes. Obviously, this is a short training, so we won't have time to really go too deep into some of these things, but if you're ever interested in going further down those rabbit holes, I love that stuff. I am one of those weird Desktop as a Service nerds. It's one of my biggest passions in my life. And then we will have our round table where we'll kind of all just talk about what we learned and any questions that come up. Also, I wanted to say that if you use the question function, you will be receiving a gift card of $10 or all the way up to $100, depending on just at random. So if your question gets asked and then answered on this event, we will be able to give those gift cards out. We just want to show that this is a round table and make sure everyone's engaged and paying attention. So just something a little fun and different. So here's one of the things that I like to talk about when I'm talking about DaaS or Workspace as a Service, and that's really staying focused on your mission and not your day-to-day IT issues. Really, that's at the core of what Desktop as a Service is about. It allows these things here, and these are what are most important to most of the customers that we talk to. And those are things like better customer service, being able to give better customer service because your desktop is up, it's running, you have access to the information that you need. And then on the other side of that coin, receiving great customer service. I can't tell you how many times people switch to the DaaS infrastructure just to get better customer service because of what they're getting right now is constantly the same issues over and over, and no one's resolving those issues. The next thing is lower cost of monthly IT services. I always hear this, how do we lower our monthly cost of IT services? Now, with Desktop as a Service, there's ways to go really overboard and increase your services and increase your costs, and there's ways to scale that down and really save money as well. I see so many questions coming in, you guys. This is good. I think the gift cards were the right thing to do. The next one is to lower the hardware refresh cycle. That is something that with any type of as-a-service model, usually those as-a-service models are going to do away with hardware. But in the case of DaaS, you're actually doing away with computers, right? And infrastructure and servers and things like that. So those are very expensive things to replace every 3 to 5 years when those things go bad. You're improving productivity. Users can hop on, use their desktop whenever, wherever they need to. You're resolving compliance issues, and we'll go a little deeper into that. Eliminating cyber threats, right? You've got, and eliminating might be a strong word, but you're definitely reducing or hopefully eliminating those threats. And we'll talk a little bit about that. You're increasing accountability. Users, they're hopping on their desktops, you know when they got on, when they got off, and you can literally record that desktop and see what the user did all day, every day. It might be kind of dry watching for some people, but for certain organizations, they want that ability to know what their home workers are doing and when. The next thing it also allows you to do is really enable those home workers. It's funny because Desktop as a Service or Workspace as a Service is amazing for home workers. Most of the deployments, honestly, that I've been involved in had very little to do with home users. They were more about 20 offices or 6 offices or one main headquarters, and they have 7 or 8 employees who work from home. It also works great for an entire company is in complete home user mode, and they don't even have a headquarters. And so we'll go into that in our case study here. So this case study here is about an organization that is called, we'll just call them the Southern California Insurance Company. They were a busy, growing insurance company, and I was brought in with one of my partners. And the main concern that when we met with the CIO was, I want to let go of the majority of my IT staff. I want to get rid of my infrastructure for IT, and I want to completely put everything in the cloud. We have all SaaS apps, right? Everything is in the cloud already, so we really don't need any kind of desktop as a service setup. So what do we do? And so what we did was exactly that. We got rid of those infrastructure on site. We completely got rid of the office space. It was this beautiful Class A office space. And I remember being there thinking, wow, this is so pretty. It must be nice to come into this beautiful office every day. But holy smokes, when I found out how much they were paying on that office, I was like, okay, now I see why you want to get rid of this office every day. Not to mention the users having to drive into the office, the cost of all of that, and the time of all of that. They had a lot of executives and insurance agents who could now, if their dream would come true, it could save them a lot of time. What happened was we were able to completely get rid of those Class A office fees. We were decreased their IT department by about 50%, and that was one of their main goals as well. And then we got 100% of the users in a work from home environment. And this happened just pre-COVID-19. So these guys were sitting pretty, almost like they thought of this beforehand. This was a really great case study. This is really unusual. Now it's not so unusual, right? But prior to COVID-19, organizations just weren't thinking like this. They were not thinking, hey, how do we just completely get rid of our office space? Get rid of all these fancy furniture and desks. It's funny, we actually, at the company I worked at, took all of their desks and all of their office furniture and repurposed it in our offices when I was the chief sales and marketing officer at the DaaS company that I worked for. You just never know what you can do when you partner with a company that can really help that organization. So this is a great case study. I have gotten on stage with the CIO of this company at several events where he and I went through this case study and shared it. And at the end of that event, I've had customers come up to me and just give me their card and go, I want to do this. And so I have, just based on this one case study, I have seen just so many organizations change the way they do their business. And so we'll talk a little bit more about how that happens. Any questions before we move on to the next case study? I see a bunch. Let's go with John B. It says, Can DaaS be used to eliminate on-prem servers? That is a great question. Yes. So DaaS can be used to completely eliminate on-site servers. Every single server that's on-site, your print server, your file server, your Active Directory server that federates every user's data, all those types of servers can be virtualized in a private or public cloud and then used for years and years to come without you ever having to touch the buttons or change or upgrade or do anything to those servers ever again. And then there's some organizations, if you've just bought new servers, because I often get that, oh crap, we just bought brand new servers. What do we do? There's some organizations out there that have server buyback programs. They will literally take those servers, completely wipe them, and buy them from you, right? And then you can still move into your own virtual private or public cloud and have desktop as a service. So that is a great question. And that's often frequently a huge motivator for people moving to desktop as a service, is they're just about to refresh a server or go through and order all new computers or laptops, and they go, look at this bill that comes at them, $25,000, $50,000, $250,000, maybe more. And they're just like, oh, all this capital outlay year after year after year, it's sickening, you know? And you don't get to take lunch breaks and you don't get to take vacations. That is why a lot of organizations would look towards desktop as a service. So great question. All right, we'll take another question after this one. So this is a workers' comp clinic. They had 275 employees and they had multiple offices, lots of home workers, lots of servers, aging infrastructure. This is sort of your average company, right? Your average mid-sized company has mostly these types of things going on. This customer happens to be over 3 years old, but I hear customer stories like this every single day, honestly, from a mid-sized healthcare company or a mid-sized company that's looking at this sort of a structural issue. So their big catalyst to look for a cloud solution was they had the opportunity to win a contract with Walgreens. And they were so excited. And when they were going through all the paperwork, this dirty secret came up that they had all of this aging infrastructure, poor reliability, high ticket counts, DR was not reliable, and they were just stuck, right? They couldn't move forward. And fortunately, they met us and we were able to help them offload all of their infrastructure into a secure private cloud environment. And here's some of the things that helped with. A centralized HIPAA SOC 2 Type 1 compliance cloud-based desktop solution, advanced email and Wi-Fi security. This solution was so comprehensive that down to even individual home users are completely supported 100% with the desktop as a service solution. Full user support, like I said, in the United States, and then another issue they were having was badge access. As users would walk into their main offices, they had badges, and they had to have all this stuff tied into Active Directory so that those users all were accounted for when they entered and came and exited from the buildings. And so all of this was managed by a desktop as a service provider, and that organization was able to gain that contract and is still really happy with that solution. Okay, more questions. Oh my gosh, there's so many questions, we're never gonna get to all of them. All right, this is from William. Tom, do you do a baseline assessment that looks for things like cabling, fiber runs, existing infrastructures like switches, et cetera? So this customer is curious to know, so tell me more about what happens before your actual deployment of the desktop. And so absolutely, the baseline assessment is really important, and different DaaS providers do these differently. So that's one of the things we do at Technology Source, is we look at the complexity of each organization before we just say, oh, let's put this with this one. And if they have things like cabling, fiber runs, existing infrastructure and switches that need to be addressed, we will want to work with a desktop as a service provider that has almost like an MSP, like a managed services model, where they can go out on site, do these types of baseline understandings. Because at the end of the day, if you're using your desktop and it's not working, you don't know why. You're just a user at home or in the office and it's not working. And it doesn't matter if it's a switch, the poor internet, poor connectivity, if the freaking Ethernet cable is not plugged in. It doesn't matter what the issue is, you just can't get to your desktop. So you want to make sure that when you're looking for that DaaS provider, that you find one that takes ownership of every single little thing that delivers that desktop to the end user. So that's a great question from William. All right, next case study, and then we'll get into a little bit more of the technical of what DaaS is. So here's a restaurant group. Love this case study. I got to go out and interview this gentleman when I was putting this case study together with him. And he had actually been with the company I was with for 4 years before I even got there. But when I got to interview him, his face just lit up because he was telling me about some issues, right? And these were PCI issues. They're a large restaurant group serving Hawaii, Southern California, a little bit of Central California, and lots of restaurants throughout Las Vegas. And the cool thing when I talked to this gentleman was that his face was so sad when he was talking about their PCI issue, because as you can imagine, when you're a restaurant, you're swiping credit cards. You're just swiping them, and you can't have anything that gets between you and that credit card. Well, PCI compliance is one of those things that's going to completely shut you down if you don't have it in order. And so that was the big issue with this organization. So what the desktop as a service did for them is it increased their speed, right? They could get those cards in faster and make sure that things were going faster. It increased their productivity, and it actually increased their reviews online to more positive reviews. And it gave them 100% coordination between all systems, because this particular DaaS provider that put this system in place for them was able to correlate all of their systems together, including their credit card system, their point of sale system. And so they also improved their connectivity. They also increased their Wi-Fi and their bandwidth speeds, and put together just an all-encompassing solution that really made a difference for this restaurant group. And I'm happy to say that all the customers we've talked about today, some of them been on desktop as a service for almost 10 years, some of them just recently, kind of right prior to the COVID that we talked about, have all been really happy with the services. And you can talk to them if you're a potential customer and you're interested. These people will talk to you and kind of give you their stories, and you can walk through that whole process with them. So any questions? I see there's like a ton. Let's go with this next one. This is a really good question from Mina, M-I-N-A. It says, could you explain how DaaS could add value in a fully SaaS environment? So example was this customer who said, we already have everything in SaaS. Why would we need DaaS? You still got that end user working from home, right? Or you've still got those users sitting at their desk in the office, and they are accessing the internet to get to their SaaS environment. So they need browser updates, right? One super basic thing, but one that kind of gets overlooked. If you don't have the right browser, if you don't have the right plugins in your Chrome extensions, if you don't have the right versions, if you don't have the right application versions. As you can see, there's a lot of complexities with SaaS that people think, oh, the right passwords, right? There's a lot of complexities that come there. So you still have users sitting there trying to get into those applications that may or may not be able to use those applications if they can't get in. Another thing is security, right? You've got cybersecurity, and I mentioned it before, as one of the big catalysts for going to a desktop as a service solution. But if I'm on my computer and I'm plugging in a thumb drive that has malware on it, then I'm spreading that into my computer. And then if my computer is networked, I'm spreading that onto the rest of my network, right? Or spreading it to my other home users if I'm logging in through, say, a VPN tunnel or something like that. So those are some reasons. Also, end user support, right? You've got all those people on their SaaS products. Who's supporting them? Maybe you want to move to a desktop as a service model so that all of those users can be supported by one company that's up 24/7 and kind of get your company out of the support business, right? If your company is set up to be an IT company and support all of your users, that's great. Don't worry about desktop as a service. It's maybe not the right thing for you. But if your organization wants to distance itself from being an IT company and supporting individual users, desktop as a service might be a great fit, especially organizations that offer end user support 24/7. And then this other question that was on the back end of that same question is, what hardware is required? So I will get into that next. Great question. Before I get into that, let's talk about what is a cloud workspace or desktop as a service. So desktop as a service is a virtual desktop. If you were looking at a demo right now of a virtual desktop, which you would not know the difference, right? I love to do when I'm sitting in front of a customer, I open up a virtual desktop on my laptop, right? And then this is my laptop. And one of the things I'll do is I'll go like this, and I'll slam the lid down depending on how dramatic I'm feeling that day, and I will literally pull out my iPad or my tablet and pop open where I was on that virtual desktop, and the cursor on the screen is blinking in the exact same place that it was. So it helps that customer say, oh, it's in the cloud. The whole desktop itself is in the cloud. It's not the data, it's not just, it's all of it. The entire compute experience is in the cloud. It's an infrastructure that's in the cloud, or VDI, virtual desktop infrastructure, and it's hosted in the cloud and paid as a subscription service. So just like when you pay your cell phone bill every month, you don't host all of the data of most people now with their cell phones. It's all hosted, right, for you in a cloud service. And then most DaaS solutions use a multi-tenancy environment, which allows you not to have to purchase all this stuff on your own, say as a VDI. You can put it all in the cloud. So I have some cool visuals too. They're super like little kid visuals, but that sort of stuff helps me learn. So I'll show you guys those kind of at the end. And then we did have a question about what hardware is needed. You need an endpoint, right? To get onto your desktop, you could use a normal PC, right? This just happens to be a Dell, but it could be any kind of computer, or you need a traditional laptop, right? I think this is actually a Chromebook. You could use a Chromebook with, maybe one that doesn't have an operating system that costs you $95 that you bought, and it's super cheap and pretty much disposable, because you're not using the power and the compute power on that device. You can just use a standard laptop. You can use a home user could just use their internet and their laptop. And then another device that you could consider is a lot of the DaaS providers have their own zero client. And these zero clients will be taking the place of that worker's computer. There are also really great deals and bargains on zero clients on Amazon. And really, these things work great. They use about 6 to 12 watts of power, so you're saving a lot of energy. They store absolutely no data. You can plug in multiple monitors, so users can do 2 or 3 screens up at a time. They're very small. I've worked with organizations, especially in the oil and gas industry, that had a lot of gas stations that had very little space in their little spaces. They were looking for very small devices that could be beaten up and pushed around. Because there's no moving parts on them, they last a really long time. These run anywhere from $120 to about $350 total, and they last about 10 years. So the hardware that's required for a desktop as a service. Now, do you need one of these? No, because you could still just use a laptop. So often when I show this here, people go, oh, okay, I get it. I have to get a zero client in order to use a DaaS infrastructure. That is not true. You just have to have some sort of device to get onto your desktop as a service instance. So another thing I mentioned earlier was the compliance reality. This is sort of the standard compliance reality for any business that's in business. And then there's the compliance reality for healthcare, which is even more extensive because you add all of the health plans and your state and local. And so these types of regulations that are coming at you all the time, working with the right DaaS provider, you're able to offload a lot of those concerns when it comes to desktop as a service. For example, if somebody walks out the door with my zero client or my laptop, there's no HIPAA data breach there because there's no data on those laptops and zero clients. So that's a huge thing when you look at most of the really expensive HIPAA data breaches for privacy are involving lost and stolen devices because they store so many records. So you can get huge fines, upwards of $1 million for each record, and those are just devastating to a healthcare organization. So when you show them something like desktop as a service, just like was shown to me and the healthcare organization I came from, which I'll tell you how that all went, you'll be really excited to see that. All right, questions, and then we will move on to a couple more points on desktop as a service. Okay, so Ron is asking this question. Will desktop still require, I think he's thinking antivirus or endpoint protection? So Ron, you're going to get a gift card. Thank you for that question. That's a great question. So you've got your compute in the cloud. Do you even need an antivirus program on your laptops and your local computers? It depends. Do you want to protect that local computer or not? And most DaaS providers offer local endpoint protection. But when you're talking about a zero client, no, you don't need antivirus on that zero client because it doesn't store any data. It doesn't really access anything but the actual desktop in the cloud. but that desktop in the cloud should have a very robust antivirus solution set up. And while we're on that topic really quick, I just want to mention one really cool thing about a desktop as a service solution is that it's constantly being refreshed and constantly being backed up. So if you were to, heaven forbid, get a ransomware on your desktop as a service instance, which everyone knows ransomware, right? A hacker comes, they steal your data, and they encrypt it, and you can't get it back until you pay them some exorbitant amount of money, usually in Bitcoin, right? And so that's a horrible thing that could happen. But what with the desktop as a service model, you can go backwards in time to the day before you clicked on that email or put that thumb drive into your desktop as a service instance if your thumb drives weren't locked down. And before all of those failures happened, you can go back in time. And so you're not losing all of your data. You're maybe just losing a couple hours worth of work. So that's a huge importance for organizations that are afraid or concerned about having all of their files and infrastructure encrypted and stolen from them. I think that's just a good add-on. And then I just have a couple more slides to share, and then we will get into some more questions. There's so many good ones coming in. So let's go ahead and do that now, actually. Let's just go ahead and take some questions. I'll ask you, Rob, what are some questions that have come up for you, or I know you're seeing a lot of these live chats here. Tell me what you're thinking after hearing about some of this. I know you've seen a lot of success with desktop as a service as well in your time. You know I'm super passionate about it.
Yeah, no, you should be. It's a great service. I think the thing that stuck out to me the most, and probably a lot of folks on the call as well, was that we're so used to and spoiled by going on and ordering something and having it at our house the next day or 2 days later. When the COVID pandemic struck, I found it very difficult to reach companies to place orders for goods and services. Is there a DaaS solution or a company offering that could have solved this problem for business owners that now are working from home and they're no longer in a call center?
Yeah, I heard you say call center at the very end there. And so I think I've seen call centers set up with desktop as a service model. I've seen dozens of them. And, it's funny because you say call center, even the organization that I came from, we were a healthcare company, but we did have a kind of a small call center, right? We had about 25 employees who just took calls all day long. And in the COVID-19 day, with what we have now, those users can just pick up, go home, answer calls from home, not have to worry about healthcare data being in their house. And then with the right DaaS provider, you can even have even the UCaaS solution, like a unified communication solution, can all be on one bill. And that entire solution can either be provided by the DaaS provider. Some of them have really robust UCaaS offerings that have even perfect for call centers and reporting and all those types of things. And then there's also DaaS providers or Workspace providers that team up with another organization to serve their needs, but they can put everything on one bill. So yes, absolutely. Great example of when DaaS would be extremely helpful for an organization.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. Tom?
Yeah, thanks, Sonia. We actually have a list of questions that have been sent in, but there was one that was in the open forum that was real key for us to talk about. Very similar and kind of on the heels of what Rob just talked about. And this was from George Kukanaga. And I'm sorry, George, if I hack up your name. That must be the Nashville thing coming out, right? So with that, he asked about, was it just a coincidence that the pandemic came? And what is the scenario for DaaS? Was that something that was already something that was paramount? Or is it something that, now has given us the opportunity to maybe look at those things such as failover and business continuity? So maybe if we could talk a little bit about that, it was a great opportunity for that. So is there a way you could talk through that maybe, Sonia?
Absolutely. So for when you're talking about business continuity and disaster recovery, they're kind of two separate things. They get lumped together a lot. But when you talk about disaster recovery, you're talking about your organization just had a hard down or a failure and you have to get back up because of a pandemic or a hurricane or some major catastrophe that just took down your organization. Most of them right now are from hacking. I know we're all scared of the pandemic and everything like that, but there's a lot that are happening from hackers coming in and just basically decimating an entire organization's business. But business continuity takes everything a little bit further and says, how do we keep the impact to our business so minimal that there's really no effect, right? The business keeps a pure continuity. And disaster recovery and business continuity are so integral to a good desktop as a service solution. Again, remember when I showed that laptop going down and then I went to another device? That computer is still up and running in the cloud, so that worker can walk to a different office. A lot of times in healthcare, you've got nurses and doctors running from space to space and can just log right into their desktop as a service instance. It's great for them, but it's also good for any organization that wants to have mobility as a key factor in their decision-making process of what solutions to look for. So yeah, that's a great reason, is disaster recovery and business continuity. And then beyond just having it all work and be good and all of that, there's the compliance aspect, and you have to, mandated by law, have business continuity and disaster recovery for many industries when you're talking about legal, healthcare, PCI, anybody who takes credit cards, which is most businesses. So there's a lot of concern there on those types of compliance things. And so you can't even operate, or you're going to look at huge fines if you do operate without those things in place. And so there's other ways to accomplish it. I'm not saying desktop as a service is the only way. And most of our desktop as a service providers also offer hybrid, right? Or unique instances for each user, rather than saying one size fits all, everybody gets this type of a desktop. They may have more of a custom setup for each user.
Right.
Good question. What else, Rob?
So one of the things that was kind of clear about the pandemic was that many of our clients did not have a very strong business continuity plan in place. Is the DaaS solution something that can be stood up quickly in the event of an emergency, or is it better when used as a proactive response that is put in place before it's needed? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. Well, just because I've seen migrations for desktop as a service and workspace as a service, I've seen those take weeks, and I've seen it take 4 or 5 months. And it really just depends on the complexity of each individual company that's going through this change. If you've got an organization that's really simple and they're just using a handful of applications, they've got their Microsoft Office that they need access to, they've got maybe some shared drive, you can really kind of rush things and push through and get things up for those users. Especially with COVID-19, I've seen a lot of the desktop as a service providers offering not really quite 24-hour DaaS, but really, really quick turnaround times to get users spun up. And then there's the other complex organizations out there who, maybe a casino who has upwards of 130 applications running simultaneously. Maybe it is a healthcare organization that has an EHR system. They've got dozens of applications. They've got different security profiles. So some users have access to things on their network and some access very minimal amounts, because in the healthcare space, we have what's called the minimum necessary rule. And so that rule really solidifies what users can access what. And you should never have more access than what's required to do your job in healthcare. And a lot of organizations like to mirror HIPAA compliance because it really just keeps things clean. And that can take time, right? Because you have to go in and say, well, should Susie have access to all of the accounting data, or just the accounting data to do Susie's job, right? So there's just a lot that goes into that. I always look at it as, this is a phrase I used to use all the time, you don't want to migrate a rat's nest, right? You don't want to take this sloppy network and these crappy security policies, these totally disorganized drives where there's just naming convention is all cattywampus. You don't want to just take that and virtualize it into the cloud. It's a common phrase is greenfielding, a greenfield migration. One of our top providers calls it a clear sky migration. And that really is about going in, studying the business, studying what is in place now and how they want it to be. What's their dream for their business? How big do they want to grow? How secure do they want their network to be? And then you make all that come true. And you can do it little by little, or you can just do it all at once. It's really up to that organization.
Yeah, and 2020 has taught us that anything can happen. So being prepared is not a bad plan.
Yeah. Tom, any other questions from our audience or anything jumping out at you?
Yeah, Sonia, kind of back to the foundational pieces that are required with a DaaS type of setup. Shane James asked a really good question, and he said, look, from a bandwidth perspective, what do we need to be able to rationalize out? Because you've got individuals at home, then you've got work that you must do. So could you answer that maybe a little bit about the bandwidth portion? Appreciate it.
Yeah, and I saw another user's comment about lag too. So they were saying, well, is there going to be a lag in my compute if it's in the cloud? And so those are kind of similar questions. The bandwidth that's required is anywhere from 0.25 megs per screen up to maybe even a meg per screen, depending on that user's graphical and needs. But for an average user, kind of someone like myself, I'm making PowerPoints all day, I'm sending emails, I'm not going to notice any delay in my compute environment as long as I have a nice, good internet connection of at least 0.25 megs. So for users who are even in remote places, I was telling you earlier, Tom, I was on vacation for my honeymoon in, gosh, it was 2013, and I went to Nicaragua, and they had pretty poor internet out there. And we were in the Caribbean side of Nicaragua, and I had to get a bunch of work done, and I was hopping from like resort to resort with my laptop, just doing a little bit here and there. I'm sure my husband was like, "Will you get off the computer?" But I was able, through my desktop as a service instance, to get onto all my compute environment and had absolutely no trouble with it. I've been a passenger in a car all the way from California to Las Vegas when I would go out to my headquarters back when I was working for the cloud provider. And I would be there sitting next to my CEO. He's driving like 100 miles an hour, and I'm just typing away on my desktop as a service instance in the cloud through, I can't even keep a phone connection from Vegas to California, but I was able to keep my DaaS connection. So it's really just about getting a tiny little bit of internet and then connecting, and then as long as you've got good internet, you should be good to go. Great question.
Great.
All right, any
Thank
more
you.
from our audience, Rob, or from anything that came to mind for you?
Yeah, I've got one. So one of the things I noticed at the outset of the pandemic, I noticed that several companies quickly rushed to buy large quantities of laptops for the workers that would be working from home. A lot of the operational staff, of course, doesn't have a laptop, unlike a sales team. So is there a better way to support workers that don't have a laptop today? How would we do that?
Yeah, well, I mean, you can buy really cheap, crappy laptops from like a Chromebook and get them onto a desktop as a service instance where they get like the power of the most greatest computer in the cloud, right? Where they're getting access to all their applications and everything in the cloud. Or users can use their own laptops. And that's one of the really cool things. It's called BYOD, bring your own device, right? And so users can just use their laptop. You would never really want a user to use their own laptop unless you had a desktop as a service. The reason why, let's just say you had a VPN connection, right? And you let the user use their own personal computing devices, and then they're logging into your infrastructure, your servers, through your firewall, everything just getting right into your network through a virtual private network through a VPN, and then you get a virus, right? Or you have any concerns or issues, you're affecting that entire network and that entire environment that you've been allowing your employee to get into. So you wouldn't want to use a VPN and a BYOD instance. I mean, you can do it. It works. I'm not saying it's not a good idea, but if you're really concerned about the security of your network and your infrastructure and you have any compliance concerns, then it's not a good idea. But yeah, that kind of went into twofold questions there.
You know, there was a lot of clients that bought AnyConnect from Cisco. It was cheap, but to me, to your point, it really didn't do the job, and the DaaS solution would have been a much more secure and robust solution for them.
Right, and it's going to drop, and there's going to be lag, and you're going to have all those issues. You can do things like log me in, but then you're logging into your computer in the office, and what if it gets shut off? I mean, that's old school technology. It does work, but desktop as a service is not that. It is a long-term solution for users to use in the office or work from home. It solves so many different issues that it's really hard to put it all down. It's kind of one of those too good to be true scenarios. That's one of the hardest things I've always had when I'm presenting this to customers is they're just like, this sounds like what we've always wanted. And you're like, it is, it really is. How did we never hear about this before? So it can be that for most organizations. It can also be a nightmare. I've seen some deployments go wrong. I've seen some instances where we came in and we're picking up the pieces of a failed DaaS environment. I've seen organizations who tried to do their own DaaS infrastructure and build out their own VDI, and everyone in the company is like, we hate DaaS, we hate VDI. I'm like, why? What happened? You know, and it just depends on how you set it up. I always say anyone can go and invent a browser, right? Like you could go in and hire coders and develop your own browser. But Google already exists. Why would you do that? You know? So that's how I look at desktop as a service. There's some companies out there that have their technology dialed in. This is all they do. They live it, they breathe it. This is their specialty, and they will make you so proud of your company's network. It's so exciting.
Yeah, you mentioned something there that I think is kind of important to mention too, and that's the fact that, when you buy through a technology source, you got access to our vendors and our relationships, but one of the big value props I think we bring to the table is that we do bring a lot of leverage to our clients. We've got experience with these products. We've got relationships with the providers. And to be honest with you, the providers want us to recommend them. So we do offer the client a little additional insurance when it comes to the implementation, that if they do have a tough time, we can jump in and help get that solution installed or help get it on the right track very, very quickly, which often happens with any application in IT.
Yeah, and that's why I love my new role here. I feel like I was talking to our founder and president the other day about this. It's kind of like this. If you go out to dinner and you are going a first timer in a new city to a new restaurant and you're by yourself, you're going to have a specific type of experience. It might be very, very good. It might be so-so. It's just, you're winging it. But if you go out to dinner, somebody's lived in that city 20 years, they've been going to this restaurant 20 years, they know the owner of this restaurant, they know every chef there, they get that entire vibe, right? You go there, you're going to get free appetizers, you're going to get the best seat in the house, you're going to get the right pairings that go with your meal, and then you're probably getting a free dessert, and you're going to get a lot of benefits. So you may end up even paying less or something similar, but you're getting this really well-rounded experience. And so that's kind of like what it's like to work with an advisor or a partner at Technology Source. You've got this whole team of people that have been working with these organizations for a very long time. And so I love that analogy, and I love food, so it kind of works well.
Yes, I love food too, and it's starting to show.
Especially with COVID. Oh, like there's plenty of time to eat. Tom, any other questions? I did want to go over just a couple more things about desktop as a service.
Yeah, we should have headed out chocolate bars or something. Everyone talking about food now, right? Well, Gary Buckles asked a real good question, and this is probably in line with now we see with the new normal, everyone calls it. You have furloughed employees, but then you also have companies starting to thrive again and bring back employees. So how scalable is a typical solution, even though we can offer multiple solutions from Technology Source, as Rob alluded, but just a generalized statement, Sonia, if you could answer that.
Yeah, that's great. And one of the cool things about desktop as a service is that it's so scalable, right? You can spin up 100 users for a seasonal type of work and then turn all that off at the end of that 2 or 3 month period. Try doing that with imaging 100 laptops, mailing them all out. It's a huge process. And then you've also got to get the return of those laptops. But if you put everyone on BYOD and you spin up a desktop for them, if those employees don't work out, or if you need to downsize your business for some reason, or the other direction, your business is taken off because you just stumbled into some really great market conditions and you need to take advantage of that and get users up and running. That's one of the great things that's about the scale and ability for organizations to increase or decrease their user count. And also, users can, with some DaaS providers, they can access some applications temporarily. You may not want to have everyone have Adobe Creative Suite for the entire year, but if you don't buy it through a DaaS provider that can turn on limited time solutions because they're able to buy large groups of licenses and then turn them on and off for users. So it's so hard when you're looking at like an ROI or a cost analysis to just be like, oh yeah, you're going to save X number of dollars. But I have literally seen organizations save so much money just on the application side of things. And then I've also seen organizations save money on the managed services. And so I know we didn't ask that question, but I know earlier you asked me a question about cost, Tom. And I feel like to me, cost has to be talked about with every single solution that you make in business. Anyone who says, well, never sell on price or never talk about the cost with the customer, just show them all the benefits and then let them beg you to know the cost. I'm like, first out of the gate, let's talk about what you're spending now so that I can look for solutions that are going to save you money, maybe not today, but in 6 months, right? Or maybe today. I helped one healthcare organization. They were spending over $100,000 a month on their MSP bill, and we were able to lower that to about $50,000 a month with our solution per location. And they had dozens of locations. And this was a nonprofit. And so that organization was able to put that money back into helping the kids that this happened to be a drug addiction treatment center that's a nonprofit that's throughout the United States. So when I'm able to do that kind of stuff, that's like, yes. But now you see why I'm passionate about it, right? Like, it really turns a business or a nonprofit around and allows them to focus on what they're really focused on and not be in the business of IT.
Yeah, you spoke a lot about cost, but the one thing we really didn't speak to, and I think it's an issue, and it's a growing issue, and that is just the fact that a lot of IT departments now have been reduced in staff to some degree.
Yeah.
Can we quickly touch on maybe the soft cost benefits of using the DaaS solution as it relates to IT staffing? Is it require more staff, less staff, lower costs? So a lot of times organizations will repurpose their IT staff once they move to a DaaS solution. There's always more software development. There's always more need out there for an organization. And I never see really good IT people get let go. Even I've seen, and I don't know if this is just unique to where I came from. I haven't taken a survey of other DaaS providers. But if there's a really good IT person on staff, sometimes they'll get hired by the DaaS provider to then be that support person for that company. So, because they know their network, right? And it's just a good fit. They love that person. So it's one of those kind of things. I don't know if it works for every instance. But then there's some DaaS providers that keep the exact IT staff on staff. They don't change any of that, and they're a lot more hands-off. There's different types of desktop as a service providers out there, and so it just depends on what the IT folks are looking for or what the executives are looking for. We're just about to wrap up here. I'll go really quickly through this. We talked about how the work from home challenges are all met through desktop as a service. Things happening to your computers, your cats or dogs ruining or wrecking the computer. We didn't get a chance to go over public versus private. I have actually a fun graphic here, pizza as a service. Public versus private could be kind of looked at here. Your homemade is you're in charge of everything. The blue, you manage it all. Communal kitchen is some of it is already managed for you. You've got the oven and gas taken care of. That would be sort of like hosting your infrastructure. And the next one is containers as a service. They're doing everything for you, kind of, except for you still have to do some of it. And then this one, P as a service, platform as a service, is also Workspace as a service or desktop as a service. This is where you bring your work to this space, you bring your workers, and you bring the data, scaling, okay? You bring the growth of the company, but everything else is taken care of by the vendor. So I thought that was a good thing to show, but that didn't go over public and private, so I don't know if we have time. 1 minute. So public versus private. In a public cloud, you're sharing the space with everyone. In a private cloud, it's built out just for you. We tend to work more with the public cloud providers, but we do work extensively with like the Amazons and those types of providers as well. So if you're looking for either one, we're really able to help you there. And so we also have a really cool white paper that's coming out on why desktop as a service is great for business continuity. To get that, just reach out to me. It could be great for customers to take a look at this. And then just some quick visuals before we let you go. Before desktop as a service, after desktop as a service, you're getting rid of a lot of that hardware and infrastructure. You may have the exact same computer, but in the new world with desktop as a service, you can work from anywhere. You have enforced security policies that follow users wherever they go. And you have 24/7 customer service. You can access it from any device. You have a really friendly IT staff that's able to work with you 24/7. And then they're not all equal, right? Every DaaS provider has their own special sauce and their own way of doing things. So that's one of the things that we'd love to work with you on, is figure out what's the right provider for you. We're going to ask you a lot of questions and then kind of help that provider. We're like a matchmaker for you, really. And so that's kind of the end of it. And we have our winners. You want to read those off before we close out, Tom?
Yes, Sonia, sorry, I was answering some of the questions. We have a ton of them, which is a great setup. So Sonia, thanks for your time and answering these questions. The top three that I have here is William Burris asked a lot of questions. They got answered. George Kikanaga. Again, there I go, hacking it up. And then Shane James asked a lot as well. So,
good. And we had over almost 40 questions today, plus dozens of chatting. So I really appreciate that, you guys. Thank you. It helps us. All of this is on our website, our 3-step process. And, you know, these are some of the things that we work with you before you buy. A lot of these things you can find from us. And so we do all of these things for you at Technology Source. And thank you so much for coming today. We have to end now. I wish we could stick around because this is my favorite topic. Seriously, reach out to myself or anyone on this call today. And all of your advisors have access to us here at Technology Source. That's what we're here for. We absolutely love what we do, and we're excited to get to know you better and see if we can help you.
Thank you, everybody, for joining. Really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sonia and Rob.
Thanks.
See you guys.
Bye.